What's up guys? PR6 is upon us, so let's take a look. First off, Sarge. She has heavy armor. Her HP stat is 9,389. Wow. Firepower, 441. Wow. Torpedo, 0. Ooh, that's not good. You never want to see a 0. Anti-air, 340. Okay. No, I'm just kidding guys. I'm not gonna be wasting your time reading out every single number, so just check the description as usual for the data mine link if you want every single detail. So, back to Sarge. Compared to some of the other Rainbow battleships, she doesn't have the highest shelling damage, but her half an airstrike will probably do more damage than your typical battleship barrage. Unfortunately, she doesn't have a concealment gauge, hinting that she probably doesn't get the concealment buff that carriers get, so the damage of her airstrikes will probably suffer quite a bit against enemies with higher anti-air stats. Well, it is possible to put all her numbers in a spreadsheet and figure out how strong she is relative to other battleships. Simply put, I am too lazy, so I guess we'll find out once people start completing her. Her skill descriptions are quite long, but I have summed up most of the important things here. She wants a USS main gun and fighter for her buffs, which will probably be MK7 or the 457 depending on the situation for the main gun, and then probably the Rocket Hellcat or a Pancake for the fighter slot. She can equip catapults and beacons, so we'll have to wait for people to start completing her before I can say whether catapults are better than shells, but for now I would assume no, mostly because she doesn't get concealment. With a USS plane equipped, she gets a 30% reduction to the cooldown of her first airstrike, which means that she'll be able to apply the burn and debuffs before all the main guns fire, which is quite convenient. Aside from the stats and damage buffs, which don't really mean anything unless you know how much damage her base does, the most impressive part of her kit is obviously the 12% more aviation damage taken and air raid assist, totaling to nearly 30% damage increase for carriers, which is almost as good as Shimanto for IJN carriers. Because she is USS, the first thing that people will jump to is using her alongside Yorktown 2 and Enterprise. However, since both Yorktown and Enterprise have flat damage buffs, air raid assistance does not have great scaling with them. Also, there's absolutely nothing stopping you from using her with Shimanto and Haku, who can make the most use out of air raid assistance. And Shimanto can also apply anti-air reduction, so I think that will actually be the best partners for her in a bossing scenario. To trigger her air raid assistance skill, you can use either Helena or Anchorage in the Vanguard. The total damage buffs that she offers to Shimanto and Haku is even higher than that of Nagato, and obviously her own damage will be much higher as well. For mobbing, I can see something like Sarge, Independence, and Saratoga with her unique augment working great. Although that fleet would be without a healer, but it's probably manageable for most situations. You can also desync her main guns from her airstrikes if you want. Overall, I think that even if she deals about as much damage as Vanguard, she will be a top tier option as a carrier buffer. But I estimate that she will probably deal damage that is closer to that of New Jersey, and will be one of the best ships in the game. Next up we have Shimanto. Her damage is great, although probably slightly below that of Harbin. She has double torps with no preload, just like Emden, but decent torpedo stats to back it up as well. Aside from damage, she also offers anti-air and burn relief, which is quite rare in the game right now and will be a pretty good option in both chapters 13 and 14 for dealing with planes and burns. Her anti-air is very high, but I feel like there's no point going on and on because with Sandy and Cheshire, planes are pretty much a joke already, so as good as it is, it's just overkill. Although she has pretty good torp DPS, she's probably not going to be too good against single target enemies, because she doesn't have the torpedo spread reduction that many destroyers and Harbin have. Next up is Felix Schultz. She is extremely similar to Otto in loadout and kit. Just like Otto, she wants a strong light cruiser gun and deals a lot of damage through barrages. She is even more tanky than Auto, but her barrages deal less damage, so they're probably around the same level. You're trading away a bit of damage for a bit more survivability, but against light and heavy cruisers, her Hunter ability might put her damage on par with Auto. She has the same ability as Duca to slow down the speed of her torpedoes, which assists the tracking of magnetic torpedoes, but unlike Duca, her torps are quite weak. Since Auto receives Z1's buffs, she should as well, and the three of them should make a pretty usable themed Vanguard fleet. Next up is Hindenburg. Just the fact that she has similar stats to Drake and ignores shields is already very impressive, but being able to equip another fully powered gun in her AA slot means that she will deal 50% more gun damage than Drake and proc her all-out assaults 50% more often. Her skill barrage is also aimed with a similar pattern to Plymouth's. All of this while completely ignoring shields. Her DPS will be through the roof, not to mention that she will also be able to receive buffs from Emden as well as both Bismarcks. She can also be a decent tank if you give her an AA gun, but it will be a complete waste to use her in that way, especially when A gear exists. I would not be surprised if a completed Hindenburg has higher personal damage than Plymouth. The last ship of the batch is Flandre. Her specialty is that she comes with a full preload and 0 drawbacks. Her kit seems to be geared toward mobbing as she has a timed barrage that can desync with her main guns, a heal, and supercharged secondaries when her HP dips below 50%. Unfortunately, her barrage is single target shelling, so in mobbing situations she will be outperformed by battleships with bigger AoE barrages. HP threshold conditions are also quite difficult to control, unless it's above a certain threshold, so I imagine that she will be a bit of a pain to use. In any case, having good efficiency, 20% firepower and 12% damage buff, and aimed barrage, as well as a preload, will make her single target damage very high, especially in shorter fights. And she is probably the strongest solo preload battleship that we have now, although the value of that is not as high as it once was. Okay, now let's move on to the new equipment. I have made a table here to compare the new equipments in bold to some of their old counterparts, because as of the time that I'm making this video, the information is not up yet on the wiki. First we have the Flandre gun, which I'm going to be comparing to the Champagne gun. The DPS numbers look impressive, but they're slightly misleading, as the Champagne gun will deal more damage with the same number of salvos, which is most often going to be the case. However, the new 380mm is great for newer players who may not have enough reload to squeeze out a last salvo with the Champagne gun, or for ships that need a bit more reload, such as Duke of York or Marco Polo. The gun does have the higher shell velocity of the Champagne gun, but not the reduced spread. Next is the gold MK6. Although its base damage is lower than the MK7, the higher coefficient makes it hit harder than the MK7 on a per salvo basis. However, the only reason you would use it is probably to sync with other things that have a similar cooldown. I was expecting a minor upgrade to the purple MK6, kind of like how the SB3C was just a very minor upgrade over the SB2C, but instead we got a niche timing gun here. Next up is the Shimanto gun. Its DPS is quite lackluster, but it comes with a Ghost AA gun when used on a light cruiser. The Ghost AA is very slow, but has a huge range of 38, so I think it would probably be a net neutral to your AA circle, but will add a bit of extra damage. From my perspective, I think we have much more AA than needed already, but perhaps it could be useful for a progressing player who hasn't had the resources to sink into high-end AA guns by the time they reach chapter 13. This can also help light cruisers that have a high AA stat but mediocre AA efficiency, as it doesn't have any efficiency scaling. So it kind of in a way makes some of the older light cruisers that don't have great surface damage anyway a little more useful. Not super impressive, but definitely has more use than some of the equipment that we got in PR5. Anyway, wake me up when we get a dual-purpose anti-air gun that comes with a surface gun attached to it. Next up is the new twin 150mm, which is made for destroyers. On destroyers, it's better than the old twin 150, but otherwise it's worse. It's still worse than the Plymouth gun, especially when you account for the 20 extra FP that the Plymouth gun gets, but it is close enough that it's likely worth using on the 2 KMS destroyers that get something out of it over using destroyer guns. Next is the star of the show, which is the rainbow gun. It's a little bit faster than the Drake gun and has higher raw as well as medium DPS. The light DPS is expectedly lower and the heavy DPS is only slightly lower. It has the highest firing angle of all heavy cruiser guns at 50, which is a huge weakness of heavy cruiser guns in general and way better than the Drake gun. So in practice, it will likely outperform the Drake gun against heavy as well. Overall, it is the best heavy cruiser gun, and I'll probably go for 3. 2 for Hindenburg and 1 for Baltimore. But unlike the Plymouth gun, it cannot be used as an auxiliary gun for battleships, so you probably won't need as many. Last but not least, we have a new accelerator. It has both lower reload and higher range than the blast shield, making it the best pure accelerator that's actually usable, but not really needed if you have a bunch of the Rainbow AA guns. And we also have a couple of augments, which are not that great, so I won't bother going into them. Anyways, that's pretty much it for the PR6 update. Hope you found it informative. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.